what are the foundational educational challenges that the EdTech seeks to address? And then what are the implications, particularly for equity? Does it accentuate or exacerbate the existing inequalities or not? So Shantan has already raised a couple of issues, but I would begin by saying that you rightly pointed out that, in 2020, after the first wave, when the national education policy was announced, at the same time, UGC brought out the notification that 40% of the credit could be opted by the students outside their parent departments. Now, there is a very sound rationale behind this adoption of EdTech that you have already narrated, but I'd like to just add one or two more points. The biggest challenge that the nation is faced with and what the NEP seeks to address is the absence of connection between the two domains, education and the job. Underemployment and unemployment is the biggest challenge for the government. This is what I feel. And this platformization is actually a step towards addressing this particular problem by giving the student the flexibility to offer the courses from the platform they would like to equip themselves with so that they can be employable and enter the job market with the necessary skill that they desire. Students, unlike the consumers, are actually trapped in the department where we offer various courses, and there are several constraints in choice making by the student. So in a way, the academic will only be successful if EdTechs are, we adopt educational technology or EdTechs are introduced, because that would give the student the flexibility to exercise their choice and liberate themselves, if I may say so, from the choices of the courses that they had to opt for, and they're trapped in the department. I know the negative connotation of the use of the word that I'm using, trapped. Secondly, when you are targeting, as you have said, when you are targeting 50% enrollment rate by 2035, if I remember correctly, and the public funding on education, commensurate expansion of public funding of education as a whole or higher education in particular is unlikely to take place. This platformization is actually one way of reducing the average cost of expansion, because the addition of a student in the class, the marginal cost, as we say, is very low. The onus would be the burden of whatever it is, small, significant, insignificant, would be shouldered by the students themselves. So the average cost of expansion would come down. And the third, which is nowhere written in the policy document, and it should not have been written either, but what we can anticipate and suspect, that the moment you give the students the flexibility to choose the courses outside their parent discipline, you are actually moving towards a market construction, because you are generating competition within the system, so that we, the faculty, are also coming under pressure and modify the courses that the students desire, which I've already mentioned, and therefore forcing some of the institutions to form cluster, negotiate with other institutions, unbundle what we offer. And so there will be a lot of shaking up from the education side as well, because two major problems that the NEP has pointed out, the draft NEP, I suppose. One is the average size of the institution is very small. It's the All India Statistics of Higher Education is already, All India Survey of Higher Education is already indicated. And the affiliated number of affiliated colleges is also pretty high, for 481, 83 universities that we have in India. So the government wants to generate competition, and it is an opportunity for the educational institutions to reorganize themselves, keeping in mind the demand that the students generate. So one major rationale is, therefore, that the linking of the education and job domain, and you have rightly pointed out, it is depoliticization of the major issue that the nation is faced with, that is underemployment and unemployment of the graduates. I'm not going to give you the statistics. All of us are aware, and you know it perfectly well. The depoliticization is coming through, as you have rightly mentioned, it is Atmanirbharata, or in the language of the neoliberal, self-responsibilizing student, which you began by saying lifelong learning and students have to, the onus, the ball lies in the court of the student to choose the right kind of courses and all. So it is a policy regime that we must address. Then you know access and whether it is replicable. Qualitable because it's a you know a service which is extinguished when the teacher leaves the classroom. The moment it is recorded, it is digitized and stored in the cloud, it becomes a digital product. The way I listen to Lata and Ashaji in the YouTube or in various other platforms again and again. So a lecture can be listened to by the student again and again, and it would help there. But the problem is the interaction that takes place in the classroom, the kind of pedagogy that we have, the dialogic, the conversation that we have, are somewhat limited when you have an EdTech platform. You rightly pointed out the issue of self-formation. It's a very important issue because one major purpose of education is what we call in a discipline is the self-formation, consumption. And self-formation cannot take place unless the students get the space to socialize, to interact with the students. Being a student of JNU, I can very well feel that my understanding of this beautiful, bewildering diversity definitely improved when I started staying in the campus 35 years ago. Otherwise, my understanding of India was very limited by reading the books of history, geography, and whatever that I had in my classroom. The classroom interaction, the campus interaction are absolutely fundamental. So just by imparting value-based education, you cannot lead to self-formation in a complete manner. You have to create that space. And when you are embracing the digital university over a period of time, maybe we are moving to a digital university, that would definitely affect the self-formation of the student, which have linked it up with the individualization, with the community kind of feeling. Now, this individualization and community, independence and interdependence, and flexibility and structure. I would just stop by just raising a couple of issues here. You see, your point is perfectly well taken. Independence and interdependence, knowledge formation, and students adopting the courses. I suspect the government is treating the sphere of knowledge generation separately from skill formation and imparting skill education at the UG level particularly. When it comes to the knowledge generation, government is trying to encourage universities through Anushandhan, National Research Foundation and all. And the masses, if I may use the word, the masses, really make us equipped with the necessary skill, the job market. It is, as you have rightly said, it is actually in the language of the new liberal, it is called self-responsibilization. Yes, I mean, the iteration will be making the student to write research. Believe that the cannot in the first 3 years. It's very difficult. The way the discipline has expanded and become more and more rigorous, I can see that the fourth year students cannot do justice to writing a good essay, write a good dissertation, just by a 3-year exposure to a particular discipline. That too blended with value-based and skill-based education. When it comes to the flexibility, I would raise just a couple of issues, which you have already elaborated. I accept, wholeheartedly what you have said. It's going to exacerbate or accentuate inequalities. See, the idea is this problem that you generate competition, move towards a market competition. But the underlying assumption is that there exists a level playing field. In case the level playing field does not exist, then competition will or is bound to exacerbate the existing inequalities. And there are 3-4 areas where I can see the existing inequalities are going to be exacerbated. You have mentioned, but I'm just repeating, or maybe one or two additional. First is that, what we call, will the students be taking informed decision, given that education is an experience good? We call it information asymmetry and all, but when it comes to the choice making in education, it goes beyond information asymmetry that we talk about. Informed choice making is, you are now, you are inundated with a range of options the students have. But the choice making becomes all the more difficult, though you have given the flexibility, but what you have said, the burden lies on the student to take the right decision. The second inequality, actually, we also need to look at what is happening at the school education. Whatever little exposure that he got, being a part of some competition a couple of months ago, I found that the private schools are spending heavily on digitalization of the school infrastructure, the elite school. And the government school, majority of them, I'm not talking about the top quality government schools, the majority of the government schools are not in a position to spend that heavily on digital infrastructure. So therefore, I can see that the digital divide begins at the school level between the private and the public, and the elite private schools are trying to capitalize on this, trying to tell the parents that, look, if you come and study in my school, you have your children have got a brilliant future, very promising future, because you are investing, and the government schools are unable to do that. The third is the language divide, which I'm raising, seeking clarification from you. Whatever I understand, very limited knowledge about AI and digital technology, that AI and digital technology requires a basic understanding of English, and in India, the fluent are very less, one single digit, but those who can barely manage to speak in English and manage is a 20 percentage point. So therefore, 1/4 of our Indian population are okay with English, okay, are more or less comfortable with it. But then, when you're bringing in all this digitization, platformization, and the students who do not have a good command over English, what happens to them? Will the technology be listening to them? I know there are some platforms which can do the translation, but will it be adequate? And then, of course, the ownership of the electronic gadgets and access to internet in the remotest part of the country, that will continue to remain a problem, though the government is taking steps. These are at the very root or foundation which will contribute to this accentuation of existing inequalities that you have referred to. Let me stop here. Thank you. Thank you, Santon. Thank you, Malish.
For elaborating some of the points. I fully agree with. I haven't touched upon the issues of the market processes, and that is already there in the discussion on EduTech. The issues of the marketization and process of unbundling, and how that unbundling is favorable for promoting a market-based transactions in higher education. That all we know, but I try to highlight the political shift and legitimacy to kind of a self-responsibilization. But everybody agree, nobody is disagreeing. Okay, technology is the. I'm not against any kind of a technology, but how to fine-tune technology in order to meet the requirement of the education, rather than the edutech deciding what is to be taught, how it is to be taught. So that should be the responsibility of the professoriate or the academics in the colleges and universities. But unfortunately, now that is not the way things are happening. In many of the public institutions in India, now the new model is a OPM, that program management, online program management. These are the companies, edutech companies, private for-profit companies. They are tying up with Indian reputed Indian institution, and 60/40 is the sharing of the profit. So I'm not getting into the issue of the profit and market, but the point is that the more and more education domain is taken away by the market forces and edutech, and sidelining the foundational issues of equity in higher education. So we need to think about what are the alternative ways of conceiving technology, particularly in India, in this particular critical juncture of massification. That's what I try to do. So thank you so much for the elaborated comments.
Thank you, Professor Chattopadhyay, and thank you, Dr. Malish, for the discussion and the follow-up comments. And I absolutely agree with Professor Chattopadhyay on all the fronts that you have mentioned, and also Dr. Malish about the specific ways of looking at technology, because technology, as we understand, is a value neutral tool, but that's just on paper. The way technology is being used by people, by companies, by corporations, by public and private institutions, and promoted in different ways by policy, that doesn't keep the technology a value neutral anymore. So what are the consequences, especially when we look at AI, especially when we look at the students and their futures at stake? And by future, I do not just mean the employability and that aspects. Future as growing up as human beings, and also where we fulfill the aspects of socialization and the knowledge that Professor Chattopadhyay has mentioned about staying in a campus and discussing outside the classrooms. That those are the things, most important things, which builds a human being. So these are some of the very important concerns that we have, but I'm not going into detail because we have some of the questions that has come. So first, let me try start with first round of question. I'll be asking 2 or 3 questions, and then if you have time, we can go ahead with the second round of questions. The first question is from Shreya. It's from IIT Jammu. Shreya said that EdTech treats everybody equally, so EdTech will not discriminate students. That's at least that's the idea. While I do not disagree with this, I also think that EdTech can also deepen the existing inequalities through the ingrained biases in how EdTech is developed. What are your thoughts on that? Along with that, there is another question, is that you mentioned about the individualization of inequalities. Can you please elaborate on how digital platforms specifically contributes to this phenomena, especially when we include AI into the picture? So, so far we have these 2 questions, and if we have, once you answer, if you have time, we'll take some more questions in the second round. Malish, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sai. Then the first question is regarding the technology treat everybody equals, but available research on edutech suggests in the opposite, because the algorithmic governance model followed by the universities in West, etc., always try to reproduce the social inequality through the learning analytics, etc., because it's a kind of a reproduction of what is existing in the society. Technology is not going to disrupt that, but exacerbate that particular thing. That is the according the available research studies talking about this. So that's why this idea of treating everybody equal is very problematic. And second point is that this is the major point I have highlighted. Unlike the US or the Western advanced capitalist or the advanced countries, India's platformisation coincided with the massive entry of the disadvantaged students who needs more care and support from the physical structure and the teachers and the staff. In this crucial period of time, we have moved towards the platform based education. That actually leading to the second question. The individualization is that earlier the failure or the success is related to the social characteristics of the students or the input characteristics, etc. But individualization means students are failing because they are not capable. So entire responsibility from employment to just like our employment to employability. The employment is something that gets a government responsibility, but employability is a relative concept. if you take a course that will be useful for a particular industry, you will be appointed into that company, so you will get a job. Otherwise, you don't get it. So whether you are getting or not getting, it is the responsibility of the student. So that's why these inequalities become a phenomenon of individual and university, state, and state means here higher education institution. The institutions are the building blocks of the state. So in the case of provision of equity or promotion of equity, the higher education institution has a major role to play. Here, the platformisation actually derailing from that foundational role and making the students feel that it is their fault. That's why something happened. And this accountability shifting is one of the foundational challenges for envisaging an equitable campus system in India.
Thank you, Malish. Now I open the floor for further questions. Among the audiences, if you have any question, kindly unmute yourself and you can ask the question. Meanwhile, while you may take, go ahead.
Hi, this is Kishore. I work with the Tata Trust. Thanks, Malish, for the presentation. Just one quick point for your comment is, these problems of individualization, loss of autonomy of teachers and students, and many other problems that you listed. Is it possible that these problems arise due to the current EdTech? Because this EdTech was not designed to be EdTech in the first place. The technology was meant to be something else, and it has been brought to education, and therefore it also brings in the inherent problems which could be projected as features of that in some other contexts. That becomes a problem in the context of higher education. Would you like to comment on this? Thank you. Was I audible?
Yes. Am I audible now?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with the first point that education technology has been designed for something else, and whether education technology is responsible for all the problem. But I turn the question and ask a different question: what are the kind of problems education technology is going to address? Without discussing about that, we will not be able to talk about what is the effect of education technology. So that's why I have taken the cases of what are the various purposes of education, how edutech actually contributing to all these things. So we need to see education something as a larger social process rather than now, because of the platformization. In 1970s, Paulo Freire talks about something called a banking model of education. He was actually critiquing the existing model of education as a banking model. The teacher knows everything. Teacher deposit knowledge in the students. So students will be knowledgeable after that. Here also, we are also converting education as a sociological and social process into an acquisition of some kind of competencies and credit from different platforms. So we are losing what is the foundational idea of education. This change in the conception of education it goes against the interest of the disadvantaged students. For instance, there are studies in the United States. They are saying, as far as the effect of students' relationship with the teacher, student peers are concerned, these are strong for students of color and first generation learners. That means first generation learners and the students of color who actually have more interaction and engagement with the teachers, their peers, and the staff of the college, they are more likely to succeed in college because their college actually compensating for some of the deficiency they have from their family or the community. But platforms does not, as of now, does not provide any kind of compensatory mechanism, and you cannot ask for a compensation also because you have taken a course from outside. So university is not responsible. And as Sharia has mentioned, EduTech does not differentiate you. When you ask for a compensation, they will not differentiate you. They will treat everybody equally. So that's why it's nowhere. So nobody take the responsibility of the failure. So this actually a exacerbating of existing inequality. I'm not telling education technology created this problem, but education technology also contributing to the existing forms of educational problems in an era of massification.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions from the audience? I have a question, Malish, if I may. You have mentioned about the problems which are created because of edtech, maybe not directly by the edtech, but definitely edtech is involved and there are consequences. So now, also you mentioned about the platformization came to India or promoted in India at a time when there are a lot of first generation learners, and considering them as experienced customers to pick the right courses from the basket is probably giving them it's overstatement basically. Considering them as experienced customer is probably not the right way to look at it. So when you when you mentioned about Paulo Freire's banking model, I was also thinking about that. While that time for a very long time we have continued with the banking model, now it is a trend of the basket model. So from banking to basket, the things are evolving in a way and in a very market centric way. So especially looking at the context of India, and looking ahead, what kind of policy interventions do you think are necessary to address the risks which are associated with platformization in higher education, specifically in the Indian context? So that's my question for you.
Yeah, inclusion of platforms for acquiring credits or accumulating credit is a policy that goes against the interest of the disadvantaged student. That is my main point. We can use technology definitely, but as of now, the current forms of use of technology is not going to address any of the education problem that we have identified. So we need to ask a foundational question: what are the problems technology will address? So we have to list out this problem. Then we should tell, okay, technology will be able to address this problem. Otherwise, it will lead to, for instance, in one of the centrally funded institution providing engineering degree. So one of the professor asked for a online presentation of his student. Then dean replied, no, it is not allowed. Student has to come and present. In a centrally funded institution also, they are not promoting the online based and the virtual learning, virtual presentation, etc. But this virtual, etc. is for the masses, not for the elite institution. And I don't think the students from the JNU and IITs will be going for online courses. Mostly it's the student from the local state universities and colleges, etc. So there is a difference in who is going to where and how, what is the what to say effect of that kind of degree acquisition. So that's
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Malish. And now I hand over to Shreya to finally conclude the session and provide a yes. If you have any. Hello. Yes,
So,
all right, Shreya, please go ahead.
okay. So I like to thank Dr. Malish for highlighting how platformization is exacerbating the divides and for this critical discussion. I think I completely agree with you when you say that instead of technology coming closer to us, it's constantly asking us to upskill and reskill, and we really need to question that. Thank you for highlighting the most important question, that what problems would edtech actually cater to. It's always very good to listen to you and learn from you. Also, I'd like to thank Dr. Shayantan Mandal and Professor Sauman Chattopadhyay for the post-talk discussion, which was very interesting. Finally, on behalf of SETI, I'd also like to extend my thanks to IT for Change, SESI RIG on higher education, and education on technology. I would request all of you to please join SESI RIGs, SESI, and of course SETI. On this note, I'd like to conclude today's talk, and we'll probably meet in the next talk, for which we'll be circulating the information soon. So we'll call it a day. Thank you again.
So thank you very much, Sayantan
Thank you.
and Professor Soman and Kashinathan,
Thank you.
all of you. So it's a wonderful opportunity to discuss about some of the issues. I have intentionally avoided some of the non-issues of the market, etc. Because I'm just trying to explore this as how actually the new technology is making a huge change in the system and structure of education. So this is one good opportunity to elaborate some of my initial thoughts. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Malish. Thank you, Professor Chattopadhyay. And
Thank you.
thanks,
Thank you very
everyone.
much.
See you in
Thank
the
you,
next.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.